I want to say a big hello to all of our friends that are logging in from around the world. We've got people coming in from USA, Boston, San Francisco, a few from Japan, a whole bunch of them from India, which are obviously, that's where our base is out there as well. Guys coming in from around Europe, and a lot of people from right across the UK, and quite a diverse group of people background-wise. Everyone from early stage entrepreneurs, IFAs, entrepreneurs, executive management. So it's a whole good and broad suite of people. Well, you know, I have my beer with me. Our chai time, call it chai in India, but it's really, you know, you can expect you to bring something along for the next one. It's a gorgeous day in Cambridge. It's actually, you know, really sunny outside. You can just about see bits of our garden behind me. We're looking forward to a good, punchy 45-minute discussion. It's going to be, you know, I know all of you very well, so no one will feel offended if I sort of move people along. I was thinking of wearing my hat today because my 12-year-old cut my hair. As you can see, it's a bit of a disaster. But moving on from one bad haircut to another bad hair day, maybe Kieran can introduce us as our first panelist.
So I'm Kieran Murphy. I'm the CEO of GE Healthcare. We have 50,000 people around the world. As you can tell, I don't have a hairdresser on staff.
Very good. So Dipali, you're next to my screen, so why don't you go next?
Sure. I'm an advisor to female founders on their fundraisers. Also an angel investor. I have a portfolio of 6 female CEOs that I've invested in, from fintech to femtech. I love digital health. And actually, GE was one of my first jobs. I loved working there at GE Equity. It was fantastic.
Oh, really?
In Connecticut and then in London.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Very good. So, Goncalo, maybe you go next?
Yes, sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Gonçalo. I'm the CEO and founder of a company in InsurTech called Renewal. I'm a serial entrepreneur. This is my 3rd tech business, and I'm based in Cambridge, just like Sunil, and I can testify it is a lovely weather.
Payman, up to you on my screen.
Yes, my name is Payman. I'm the founder and CEO of AI Vivo, again based in Cambridge, and we have a lovely weather here. And we have a platform that I can explain later on, but we are very pleased to, let's say, be here with you all guys.
Payman, could you just give us another 20 seconds on your actual background, because you're going to present some data which could be quite interesting.
Yes. My background is bioengineering, and then I did my PhD in control engineering in Cambridge University, and then I moved to genetics. Therefore, you can see that is a mix of engineering, biology, and control, and nonlinear dynamics, and so on. And we try to grab all of that background to build this systems pharmacology platform for AI Vivo.
Great. Steve, you're next to my screen.
Yeah, thanks, Sunil. Afternoon, everyone. My name's Steve Thirlby, and I'm a wealth management consultant at Fairstone Financial Management. So I advise clients on all aspects of financial planning, whether that be business, private protection, investments, pensions, or later down the line, inheritance tax planning. So my background in consultancy is in advanced pension strategy. So elements working with business owners and high net worth individuals, helping utilise pension assets to invest in their business, allowing individual clients to invest in non-standard assets such as early stage startups, working alongside that with their private portfolios.
Perfect, great. So, Sanjeev?
Well, yep, Sanjeev from Newable Ventures. So I head up the commercial unit at Newable Ventures, working with private and corporate investors to support post-seed, pre-series A innovation technology companies. Prior to that, I worked in wealth management as well and specialized in venture capital market as a whole.
So I see you took the slightly easy approach to hair management to the rest of us.
This is one of the only times it pays off to be bold.
Yeah, very good. So really my first question that actually one of our portfolio companies texted into me was, look, I need to go out and raise my Series A. We've got various companies raising seed. When is this going to be over? And from our perspective, we can see a lot of testing that's about to kick in. The vaccine is really 12, 18 months on. And it's really why I've asked Payman to join us today, because you know, he has his platform, which he'll briefly describe, and he's got some very interesting data that came out the other side of it. So maybe Payman, you can give us something about your platform and really describe to us what you think might work, which combinations of drug therapies may be interesting, and should we be taking chlorine?
Okay, that's a very good question.
I've got a bottle of Dettol and disinfectant around the back just in case it saves me.
Yes. Okay, maybe I can just briefly tell you what we did and what is our view, because it's a very challenging situation. We need to find a solution as soon as possible, and let's start with the major, let's say, effort that we an approach that we have in pharmaceutical industry, which is we know some information about the disease. Mainly is a target oriented, which is dominated in pharmaceutical industry. Therefore, we actually try to find, for example, design a compounds that can interact with that target. And this is a major, let's say, target-oriented approach that dominated the pharma industry in the last 2 decades, maybe the last 30 years. What we are trying to do is, instead of looking at one specific target, we have a phenotypic approach. Therefore, we're looking at the whole, the changes that we have on all the genes, if we actually have that kind of functional genomics data. And then there's the phenotypic approach. It's a global view of what's happening in that disease, and then how we can modulate that disease. And this is very important for a new disease that we don't really understand what's happening and what is the actual effect. And our platform is also directly related to having a representation for a specific disease, a phenotypic representation, what's happening on the larger scale on 2,000 different, for example, processes and pathways, and then try to first answer this first question, that what should be modulated in that disease, what has been modulated by the infection, and what we can actually modulate. And then the second thing is, we also actually created a large representation, again, phenotypic representation for the effect of different drugs and compounds, which includes 90,000 different representation. And then this is again phenotypic. Then,
I think the interpretation for all our audiences, Payman has developed a really comprehensive AI platform and has done a lot of work on trying to understand how COVID-19 works. And you're about to really come into some of the output of the data which made the national news last
Exactly, week. Yes. I reached the point that then we try to match the disease information with the compounds on the phenotypic level, and then ranking drugs, which one can work and why is should actually work in this disease. And then what we did is just ranking this 90,000 representation that we have for different disease, the different compounds that include compounds that approved one. Some of them are in phase 2 and phase 3. We only picked that one because we can translate that quickly to clinical setup. And at the moment, with the help of other great people that we have, including Sunil and David Cliffley, we try to push this forward to engage with people that they are running clinical trial in order to quickly test them as soon as possible. And
so Payman, could you go to one of the large pharma and point out one of their drugs which they may not even have considered to be interesting for COVID-19? Are you able to do that now?
This is exactly what we are trying to do now, because we have the list, we have the name of the compounds, we know why it's actually working. And in some cases, this is unexpected modulation, because that drug is, for example, has this mode of action, which is known for that company. And now we pick that can be used for COVID-19 because of this reason. And in addition, we also actually have a list of combination that can be used in order to attack the disease from different angle at the same time.
So coming back to the original question, how long will this all take? Will we beat the vaccines with therapeutic intervention combination drugs on the market that already work for other conditions?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think these drugs, especially if we focus on about 50, 60 drugs that they are already, let's say, approved and has been tested in human before, and they are already on the market. Therefore, the translation from this kind of, let's say, drugs to the market is like, for example, running quick adaptive clinical trials to see the efficacy, specifically for the combination. And that can be a game changing here until we have a vaccine, until we actually get this immunity on a larger scale.
And the drugs, like generic drugs that we all know, that there are some other ones that you mentioned in the press release, but things like quinine, which is well known, well advertised, that may or may not work for these sorts of side effects. Did that rank in your model at all?
Yes, as I said, we have chloroquine and we have hydroxychloroquine, which is a bit different. Chloroquine is more, let's say, toxic. That's why is actually the main focus now is on the hydroxy one. And I think this is also actually coming in our list. We know which part of the pathway this drug is modulating, and I believe this drug alone is not a solution. But we need to consider other combinations. This is our understanding.
That's great. Thanks for that, Payman. I think the summary is there's a lot of information that you'll be releasing, contacting big pharma about, which can really help drive the therapeutic intervention to COVID-19 and hopefully get us over this hump with drugs that are already in existence or in the late phase pipeline of other large pharma, and really help us to sort of tackle COVID-19. On that one note, I just want to move over to Kieran and say, look, we are in this really quite tricky area of COVID-19, but the landscape changes, and I've been through 3 or 4 different downturns in my life before, and new technologies, different technologies succeed as we come out of this. So from your perspective and what you're doing at GE, which technologies do you think will be interesting and emerging from in the post-COVID-19 era?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I've lived through a few crises myself over the last 30 years in the business. There's no question that this one is the most dramatic, and probably the game changer actually for healthcare around the world, which is clearly in the eye of the storm. I think there are 2 or 3 key areas that I see are critical. One is the whole area of testing people's disease status, and it is at one level it's a little bit scary at how slow the system has been to ramp up testing. Now at another level you could say that in places like South Korea and perhaps China, they were quite fast to respond, but the accuracy of that test I think is probably questionable. I think for the developed world, for Europe and for the US, the ramp up of testing has been too slow. And for certain, our ability to take simple techniques of sample collection and turn that into a meaningful result, whether it be for PCR or serology, this is a really, really critical area for the future. The second one, which is closer to home for me, is how hospital capacity is run. And, I'll be as shameless as everybody else in promoting what we're doing. We developed a technology called Command Center. And so for the whole state of Oregon, for example, we now know exactly where there is spare bed capacity, where there is spare ICU capacity across the whole state. We're able to pull that data, and it's effectively live. It's updated every 3 minutes from existing EMR data. And it allows, it could allow people like the NHS in the UK, if we were to deploy it fully here. It's deployed in part in the NHS, by the way. But if we were to deploy it fully, it would allow people at a glance to see where there are spare beds, where there are spare ventilators, and how they could potentially divert patients, or divert ventilators for that matter, to the areas where they're critically required. I think we have to see a lot more technology like that. That's real time, it gives up-to-date status of the productivity of the system. And the third one I would say is remote monitoring of health generally. And so it shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody that actually the biggest casualties in the current crisis are the care homes, the care home occupants. And quite frankly, we are going to have to change the way healthcare works in relation to what happens post-treatment, post-hospital, and this care in a more social setting, care at home, so that patients can be monitored effectively. We have all of the technologies. If you look at the difficult things we do with, you know, Apple Watches and so on, and camera technology like we're looking into right now, the technologies are there that just haven't necessarily been applied to the setting where it can deliver most value. And we have to change this paradigm at great speed. And just to give you an example of what we can do already, using cameras and using detector technologies, we can monitor whole wards of patients right now. And there is no reason why that can't be extended into more of a home setting.
No, Kieran, that's a really great summary, and I've been following a lot of what GE's been doing via LinkedIn feeds and the press, and the way that GE's been approaching, GE Healthcare particularly, has been approaching the crisis. It's been amazing, and really thank you for the work that you guys are doing to support the crisis we're going through. So, but in terms of the investment landscape, I mean, before you were the big cheese at GE, you used to be an entrepreneur like the rest of us, you know, down in the trenches.
Hey, listen, I'm still an entrepreneur.
Well, actually, you're obviously. So, I mean, do you feel that the future technologies, the future startups will be more healthcare oriented now? Do you feel there's more passion behind healthcare type technologies?
Well, there's one very good reason for why people should be investing in healthcare, because that's where the money is going to be. I mean, so where else are you going to invest money now? In oil and gas, renewables, where it's I mean, it's a very tough business. Like, we're in the business, so I can tell you. I think travel, accommodation, hospitality is going to be tough. So, I mean, healthcare is where the game is right now. It's what the world needs. And I think also, just in terms of the stuff we're speaking about on this call, there's no question that we are still at the foothills of a mountain in terms of what digital technology can deliver for healthcare.
I'm just going to jump to Gonzalo, because he doesn't have a healthcare business, but he has. What do you think of what Kieran said? Do you really believe that everything's going to be this is the place to be right now? And can you tell us a little bit more about your startup?
Yeah, of course. So first of all, Kieran, that was amazing. I really enjoyed that. Thank you. That was very, very to the point and very clear. I think Kieran is absolutely spot on the short to medium term. There's no doubt about it. But it really depends how far in the future are you looking at. You know, if you're looking into the next 6 months, is anyone going to invest in an airline business? Probably not. But if you're looking in 2 years' time, 3 years' time, in a longer term, are people still going to want to travel and visit other countries and other cultures? Yeah, of course they are. Are they still want to be healthy? Yes, of course they are. You know, but the world will not look like it looked until the beginning of this year. But there will be certain resemblance there. You know, some things will go as close to normal as they will possibly can. You know, even if you study the history of pandemics in the past, you know, it's a matter of time until the world moves on to the new normal state. Let's call it that way. In terms of what I do, so I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've done a technology business in recruitment, a technology business in investment in private companies, and now I'm starting what is still a confidential project that I don't know what made me, but I actually told Sunil what it was. But it's a confidential project in insurtech, where I think there's still a huge room for innovation, and you know, it's alongside financial services and healthcare. It's one of the sectors that I think that still has a lot to go for it in terms of potential for innovation.
That's great.
So if you don't mind, I'll just jump in on a point.
Sure.
Yeah. I think first thing is we need to be careful that this early stage market does tend to get pulled in by the tide of key buzzwords, and that doesn't always relate into the actual application of the technologies or the actual technology itself. So I think something I'm really cautious of, and it's coming to mind at the moment, the more conversations I'm having, is people not jumping onto these bandwagons and then also later in about 6 months time, 12 months time, realizing that these technologies aren't really step-changing healthcare technologies that they thought they were investing in. The other thing is also, I think this current pandemic highlights the need for overall productivity and infrastructure, which I think is more of a horizontal across all different sectors. When you break that down, you talk into telecoms, global communications, etc. All of these need to be strengthened. So I think there's also an opportunity there in businesses that are going to have an impact, because the way, as people have mentioned, the working world is not going to go back necessarily to normal, and the reliance on different...
I'm going to cut you off there because I've got a stream of questions coming in and we have a limited time. And I want Dipali and Steve to have a say as well. So Dipali, you've been very active in this in investment space, in angel and promoting female founders. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do and whether you're seeing more drive towards healthcare businesses?
Sure. I've been advising female founders for many years now. Before that, I ran an angel investor network for 4 years. So I've been in the early stage landscape for 8 years now in the UK. Firstly, I would like to say that I'm talking to funds regularly on a weekly basis. I talk to 3 or 4 funds. Post-COVID, I wanted to reach out to all the funds that I knew. So I spoke to about 60 funds and still talking to them. I would say that most of them are still investing. I think smart investors always invest through the cycles, through good cycles and bad cycles. Having said that, this is the worst I think we've ever seen. I've lived through 3 economic crises, and I think it's really hard, this one, because it came so suddenly. But most investors are still investing. I think seed and pre-seed will be least impacted because you can write smaller checks on Zoom. I think Series A is still harder because it takes longer to get to know the teams. There are bigger checks. I think a few funds might club together to do a Series A deal rather than taking the whole deal themselves. So those are some of the trends I'm seeing. I'm also seeing reductions in valuations depending on the sector, 30 to 50%. So I will say that deals will get done. They'll take maybe twice as longer, but it's not to say that people are not investing. That's the first point I want to make.
So Dipali, I'm just on that one point, because I know that Sanjeev and then Steve had a couple of points. So Sanjeev, you had a point on valuations on things that you're seeing in the marketplace, and then I want to jump to Steve to see from the people actually investing, the private investors, what their sentiment is, because that ultimately drives investments for all of us, whether it's into funds or directly into startups. So for Sanjeev and then Steve.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. We've definitely reviewed a lot of the companies that we're going to be placing investments into. So we were coming up to the end of the tax year when everything kind of blew up. So we had reviewed quite a lot of businesses. And once this came about, we noticed that actually we could review those the valuations based on the current economic issue and situation, and those businesses might not already get the uplift straight away. So we saw a kind of revamp on the valuations down by 25, nearly 30% on a few businesses.
So Steve, and then so if you can comment on the investor sentiment, and then over to Kieran to say about whether the corporates are going to step in and bridge some of that funding landscape and support some of these early stage companies. Are you going early or not? But so to think about that. So Steve next.
Yeah, no, I think it's important that we try to take as many positives out of this as we can, with regards to the current pandemic and the economic climate. And I think one of those that I certainly feel as an advisor that can be related to clients is highlighting the importance of continuing to invest in small businesses on all scales. So whether that be lower level government funding or indeed larger scale private funding, via EIS and SEIS, which we're sort of discussing today. And I go back to a conversation, Sunil, that me, you and Craig were having the other day, where I think discussions with clients around early stage investing, especially in healthcare and biotech space, will now have some real context and something that we can relate them back to. We've all lived through this COVID-19 era where people have been working so hard to create antibody tests and vaccines for COVID-19. So we can kind of bring them in as part of the story almost. So ultimately, I think, we're going to see retail, sophisticated retail clients want to really learn more about these businesses. how they'll make an impact, you know, on the global world, and in addition to just potentially enhance returns through early stage investing. You know, they'll have more of an emotional investment, and I think a sort of desire to want to help, really, if that makes sense.
So do you think, so from that perspective, you're saying healthcare investment or those types of investment theses may gain more traction directly with individual investors? That's what you're saying.
I think so. I think especially with what we're going through now. You know, it's highlighted across the media, whether that be social media or the news, of course. You know, the efforts on a global scale.
So, Kieran, from a corporate perspective, are you going to go in early and step in?
Of course, it depends. And we do invest in early stage companies, but honestly, only when we see how they can fit onto a platform that we are developing by ourselves. So if I take a typical example for us, where early stage companies, I think, have been very successful and proliferated, has been in the development of artificial intelligence applications and machine learning in the setting of radiology. And so we've been an investor. We've worked with a lot of these companies very closely. The successful ones involve us early, and they understand where they fit into the ecosystem. The point that was made earlier about this being a horizontal model going forward is absolutely spot on. This is going to be about who can collaborate and who can form part of an ecosystem rather than thinking they can make it win races as a one-trick pony. It's just not going to work. And so we love working with companies who understand that where they're at in their evaluation cycle.
So Kieran, I'm going to jump in. I've got questions for you. I've got a lot of questions feeding. I'm going to try and feed as many about I can. Can Kieran comment on what are main blockers to the kind of digitization which he and G are able to deploy today? What are the main blockers?
Healthcare is a fragmented system by and large. Less so in places like the UK, but if you look at the US, it's fragmented. And so at the system level, it's fragmented. And if you think about it, at ecosystem level, it's very consolidated. So like, if you're an EMR company, you know, you're one of a pack of 2 or 3 companies that are making EMRs work. And so digitization is happening in healthcare big time. So the blockers, it's just resistance because it's fragmented.
I may have read a great article today. I was talking about therapeutics, biotech therapeutics traditionally, but this pandemic may lead us to more digital therapeutic type scenarios, which is why as a fund we are looking to focus somewhat more on those options as well in terms of investments. I just want to go a little bit towards the funding landscape and what sources of funding. We have a lot of startups in there. We've got a lot of questions coming in from early stage companies, and these are not just from the UK, but governments have been intervening. What are the options and sources for funding? So a little bit to Sanjeev to talk a little about EIS funds and where they might step in, but also open up to where other government funds may support and help as well.
Sure. So on this, I think it's quite important to note the UK's position within the global early stage investment market, and the fact that we do attract, and for many years have attracted, the highest level of venture capital within Europe. So the government wants us to keep that position, and with that in mind, they are going to be putting in place the relevant stimulus where they can. However, what I would say for early stage businesses is they definitely need to be, even more so now, making sure they're not just thinking about the current round, but also the impact at future fundraisers as well. And this is extremely important when you're starting to structure deals through things like convertible loan notes or debt, and that could trip you up at a later point in the market. So you need to have a clear idea of how you're going to be getting that funding coming through. There are many different options available, but just make sure you're taking the right one. The thing I would talk about very briefly is a couple of different grants that are available via Innovate UK and other agencies. Utilize these at companies like, so we've got a team who are purely on the advice side who can help looking at what types of grants.
Sanjeev, I'm just going to go to Dipali now. I've got another question for Dipali. So I've got a question from New York, from Carlos. Do you think investors will shift towards COVID-19 at the expense of other therapeutic areas? Or do you think that more money will go there rather than other opportunities?
I mean, I think most investors look at investing over a longer term horizon. You know, I looked at a COVID-19 startup myself in Berlin, thinking that I want to invest in a COVID-19 test. I did a fair amount of due diligence. I didn't think it was the right team, but I think investors will invest in lots of different areas. I'm looking at a vaginal microbiome testing business right now that has nothing to do with COVID-19. Looking to invest in that, looking at personalized medicine. I'm looking at, you know, future of work. How do we make interactions across Zoom more meaningful?
So as long as it's a good investment, it doesn't actually matter. There is probably a more investor bias towards healthcare in general. I think you've seen that. You're a generalist investor, but
Yes.
I've seen you doing more healthcare. But you know, I've heard from Gonzalo that as long as it's a good business, it's changing the paradigm, it will get invested to. I've got another question. One of my questions, I'm just going to jump in with this one. Will the funding landscape now be more global? So post the COVID-19, what will be the new norm? How will it change the way that we operate, do business, and invest in that sense as well? And while someone did partly, maybe she can comment about how she feels with how she feels as we change.
I think the biggest change. I think the biggest change I'm hoping we'll see is that there'll be more female founders getting funded. There'll be more women in the workplace because, you know, working from home is going to become a bigger norm, I would hope. I would think that we have this huge asset waiting to be monetized, and I would see more women in the workforce. That's what I'm hoping for more than anything else in the investment landscape. But yes, I would think, you know, checks. I was on a call yesterday with Accel, and Accel said they've been writing checks on Zoom, maybe early stage, but they have been writing, you know, 1 million, 2 million on Zoom. So I do think that it's changing the way, it's a paradigm shift in the way we live and work.
Sunil, I think it's worth highlighting, if you don't mind, that the early stage finance is very counter-cyclical, right? These investments are investments that will not see any return in the 3, 5, 7 years, and by then COVID-19 hopefully will be distant memory, and probably there will be some sort of other issue going on around the world. And when it comes to early stage, I started a business in 2007, so just before the 2008 crisis. And you'd imagine that'd be a really good time to start until suddenly hit 2008. Then I started Syndicate Room in 2011, so just after the crisis, and just as things were starting to pick up, but still pretty bad shape. And now, just as this crisis is starting or is evolving and it appeared very quickly, I'm launching a new business. So, you know, and actually it's a massive opportunity for startups because you can get access to top talent that otherwise would tend to go into big companies paying much better packages that you can offer. And also that those large competitors, they will be trying to preserve cash, and they will be pausing certain projects, innovations, and etc. That the startup can be much, being much leaner, can jump on those opportunities and really build a product really well, while these big companies are just pressing all the projects onto pause. I know that healthcare at the moment is completely the opposite. It's in overdrive. But all the other sectors are very much going into pause. That gives a great opportunity for startups and startups investments.
One point that you mentioned, we've seen that trend. I mean, look, in the lockdown, we have access to people that we generally would find it hard to get hold of, or hard to recruit. And we pull this panel together with all your times and very busy schedules. Within a few days, this would never normally happen in normal times because you'd be in the office. Kieran would be on a plane to somewhere else in the US and
exactly.
whatnot. So it would be very hard to pull this kind of thing together. So I think that, in terms of talent, there's now access, and Payman and I are working on some things that he's been doing, and we've got access to some people that would normally be really, really difficult.
Yeah. But Sanjeev raised a really good point, which is think about the next round.
Okay.
I completely agree with the point Gonzalo just made. For one other reason is that industries are disrupted right now, so it's a great as we're living through disruption. All of a sudden, people's minds are a lot more open than they would have been before, including regulators, by the way.
Yeah.
So the regulators are now going to tune into something that a few months ago they wouldn't have even considered. And
Yes.
your point we were making at the beginning about new treatments, your software that's going to identify good candidates is all of a sudden going to look a lot more interesting.
Exactly, yes.
Something that's quite topical in the UK at the moment is about the future fund and the future funding landscape. There's a government scheme announced really to target a lot of the companies that they're in the sort of seed or Series A phase, allegedly. Now, I'm going to go to Sanjeev and probably Dipali here to comment on how we, very, very briefly, a couple of lines on whether we think that money is targeted at the companies that we generally would look at, or are we hoping for something else?
So the fact that they have announced something in this area is definitely a really good positive sign. I think it's just going to take them a little while to get it at the right stage and implement it correctly. Right now, that future fund in the current terms are only really available for Series A onwards. However, I think if they make a change to a couple of the terms, that could open it up for SEIS, EIS in early stage. Dipali, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, they came up with a convertible structure. I don't even think it's Series A because most funds don't come in convertibles. You know, they come in straight equity rounds. So right now, the way they structure it, and I've given feedback to the Chancellor's team actually over the last few days, they need to change the structure so that it's essentially a convertible from the government, but you know, investors can come in EIS.
I'm going to go to Payment and Goncalo very quickly. You both are out there fundraising in the market right now. What are you feeling when you talk to investors directly? And then over to Steve to say, you know, what is he seeing when he speaks to high net worths looking to invest through these structures?
Should I start?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
By the way, Payment, I've got a lot of technical questions for you that keep feeding through from around the world.
I tried to answer a few of them, but okay, from our understanding, first of all, we try to mostly, let's say, about 3 weeks before the lockdown, we tried to actually move all of our competition to Amazon AWS to be able to work from anywhere, which was, I think, a right decision at that time. And that actually enables us to distribute our efforts. And then we first ask, is it possible to do anything for COVID-19 or not? And the starting point for us is having the right kind of functional genomics data that we need as an input. And then we managed to actually do that in about 2 weeks' time. And then the computational side was about another 2-3 weeks to finalize the ranking up to be in this situation now that we are actually discussing. And now the question is, okay, we are sitting on this, let's say, data. It is very interesting, let's say, observation matched with the other scientific activities around the world. And what we can do here, and the main question again from the investment perspective is, if we want to work with some, let's say, applying for a grant, and we have to wait for a few months to get something, and then the testing is also very slow, and getting to right people that they are running clinical trial is not easy. Therefore, the alternative approach that we are now exploring is how we can actually just allocate resources that we can, or raising some money that we can quickly do this screening working with CROs, for example. Now the question is it should be something that we have to do now, or we should not, let's say, investing or limited resources now on these, let's say, areas? Is as you also actually said, we are disrupted by COVID-19, and therefore this is a major, let's say, discussion that we have at the moment.
So I've got, just before I just go to Gonzalo, there's a question from for you, Payment, from Chaz Bounty, who's the Pro Vice Chancellor at Oxford. It said, can Payment tell us when drugs should be dosed, fever at home, or just hospitalized? Thanks.
Okay, yes, the answer is referring to what I explained about the drugs. For drugs, we have the phenotypic effect of drugs on multiple, this is about on 70 different disease models. And then we have the response of these drugs at different dosage at different time point. Therefore, we call each of them as a manifold. Therefore, we have multiple manifold for each of these drugs. And then when we are ranking them, we know that this drug has been ranked, for example, 10, and this is the dosage and additional information. Therefore, we have some idea of which one is working and what actually dosage, which is can be the initial point. But going forward to test in hospital, that's another, let's say, question. We need to consider all the other toxicity and if we are referring to combination, some kind of, let's say, unexpected side effects. And again, our platform can also guide us which of these drugs can actually just be a good candidate for combination, but they should actually synergetically modulate the part of the disease that we want and not modulating other sites that we don't want. And that's also related to the dosage.
Thanks for that, Payman. I think it's something because we are getting to the last few minutes. If people are interested in AI Vivo, they can contact O2h. We'll put them in touch with you. Gonzalo, can you just tell us a little bit about what you're facing out externally? What are you seeing, and how you find fundraising?
So we were very lucky in terms of timing because we closed our previous funding round just before the whole thing really hit the fan. So that one was done, was oversubscribed. So we were in a very, very lucky with the timing. So now the focus becomes the next round, which will happen between now and the end of the year at some point. And I think that hopefully there'll still be money around, but people will be more careful, particularly private investors. But some others actually just jump on the opportunity because it's, as I said, it's counter-cyclical. VCs, they still have the money. So they raise money usually to invest with a 10-year horizon. So they still, whatever money they had in January and in December last year, they still have it in their bank account to invest now, unless their partners just suddenly pull out. But most of the money will still be there. I think there'll just be more, you know, the valuations are going to suffer, no doubt about it, but still the same amount of money out there to be invested. So for us as part of Renewal, yeah, we'll be raising money from private investors between now and the end of the year. The EIS is still applicable, which is in the UK for those that are from abroad. So hopefully we'll be okay, but of course it's always a concern as a startup. But don't forget, the startup is also much larger than a big corporation.
I'll just say that if anyone's interested in investing in backing you, which is what we did, we backed the entrepreneur in this case, they should contact us. So Dipali, do you have any closing remarks about what you're seeing in the market and what you're feeling?
I'm actually feeling positive. I think there'll be some great businesses that are going to come out of the crisis, very interesting ideas. There's always innovation when there's, you know, times like this. So I'm quite excited. There's still capital to be deployed. I'm investing on behalf of the Atomic or Angel program this year. There are 15 of us. We have 100K each. That's 1.5 million. It's not a lot of money, but it's great money, you know, as an angel to have. So there are lots, and like Goncalo said, funds still have the money. They can't allocate everything to the existing, you know, they just possibly can't. They will deploy. They're just waiting to find better, you know, they just need higher returns for the same capital. So just probably we'll see a lot of really good deals happening 6 to 9 months from now.
Thank you, Dipali. So Sanjeev, over to you. You know, are you seeing a push towards healthcare? I mean, your fund is out there fundraising. It's obviously hard to raise money right now. Are you feeling good about what you're doing? Closing remarks?
Yeah, so echoing what Dipali said, it is a positive opportunity for a lot of these innovation technologies. And I'd go back to my point about investing in productivity overall and infrastructure as well as healthcare. Both, I think it's important that there's still diversification, but it's all done in the right way and with the right businesses itself. So yeah, closing remarks, be careful as to the funding that you're looking at, but there is funding out there and the investors, especially angels, need to step up to the plate and make sure they're supporting businesses.
Thank you very much. Steve, closing remarks about what you're feeling and what your investors are telling you?
Well, again, I think, you know, I just want to sort of finish it off from a regulatory point of view, I suppose. I think it goes without saying that, you know, clients' investment experience, attitude to risk, capacity for loss, all those things are significant factors that as advisors we need to take into consideration on whether, you know, early stage investment, EIS, SEIS are suitable. But with this being said, you know, I still think that education on both advisors' parts and clients' parts is still one of the biggest factors when it comes to, you know, making them parts of their broader portfolios and investing into early stage companies. So I think as advisors, we just need to ensure that, you know, we're speaking to clients about early stage investments, how they work, how they can benefit their portfolios, you know, and ensuring that we're doing the right things by them. So I think it's the outlook.
Thank you for that, Steve. Kieran, second last word to you. I get the last word.
Listen, I feel very, very positive about the environment we're in right now. I think this crisis has grounded everybody in the realities of what's going to be important. I think we're entering a phase where all of a sudden productivity, which Sanjeev mentioned, security, food, and health have taken on a whole new importance. Digital as a platform is the transforming factor here, and I think, you know, anybody investing wisely into applications in that space will do extremely well.
Thank you for that, Kieran. First, so before I thank you all, I just want to let you know about next week's Chai Time. We've got the far more older and slightly wiser older brother Prashant Shah facilitating a session about innovations from your sofa. And we already have confirmed speakers as head of the Judge Institute with Chris Locke, Bollywood actress Lekha Washington, and with several other people that we're now in contact with. So we should have a really good panel discussion. Prashant's a master at facilitating, way better than I am. He's also a teetotal, so he actually might have chai. And on that note, I want to thank you all for your time. Really appreciate you taking time out. And see the rest of our viewers. Thank you for tuning in. See you next week. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.